Okay, well, welcome to today's broadcast. We are going to be chatting about finding a new role, a new job in 2025, and why is it so challenging right now? We have an absolutely stellar panel here that is going to help us tackle that question. We've got all sorts of different points of view, and I am absolutely sure you're going to walk away from this conversation with at least one or two nuggets that are going to help you as you consider your career, your job role, and if you're looking right now, hopefully some advice to help you get that kick started in just the right direction. So without further ado, let me introduce myself and then we'll get to the panel. My name is Jessica Carroll and I am your host today. I will be moderating the discussion and keeping our panelists in line. And along with me, let's kind of do a quick run through with the group. Dean H, you want to give us a little bit of who you are?
Sure. I appreciate that, Jessica. Yeah, I've been in the IT recruiting business and the staffing business and corporate talent acquisition for over 30 years. Most recently, in the past year or so, I've decided to transition into being a full-time career coach and taking on contracts with people that I know.
Awesome. Kevin?
Thanks, Jess. Really happy to be here amongst this panel. My name is Kevin Swessinger, and for the better part of 30 years, I have been in the IT staffing industry. I conduct executive search all the way through staff augmentation from the executive level, CIO, CTO, CDO to individual contributor level. My organization is called PRI Technology. We're one of 7 brands that are held by a company called Resourcing. It's an umbrella organization. We're private equity owned. And we operate in about 40 states and we have about 20 physical offices. But I think the longevity in the industry for me is about being a pretty good listener, listening to what a candidate is looking for, listening to what a client is looking for. And I'm really kind of a culture warrior as well. I understand that there are specifics in terms of the jobs that everybody needs filled and what every applicant brings to the table, but I'm really big on aligning culture, on aligning purpose. And I've always made it a point to say, let's bring together people who want careers and not just jobs and match that with some really great clients. That's what I'm all about. So again, happy to be here and look forward to this discussion.
Yeah, we're excited to hear what you have to say to some of these challenges we're going to be discussing. Bill, can you give us a little bit of an intro?
Sure. Bill Skelton. I'm a seasoned IT professional, and by seasoned, I mean that I've been doing this for over 30 years, so that comes with all of its advantages and disadvantages. I've been, most of my time has been in corporate America, large companies where I've been a full-time employee. I did spend the last 5.5, 6 years as a consultant and just recently completed a job search of my own, where I landed at a target company. Yeah, looking to share experiences, not just of myself, but like I have a lot of colleagues and family members and friends that have been through it as well. So I've got some of their perspectives to share. So
Some more stories that we'll hear from you.
Yes.
Dean R, a little bit of an intro.
Sure, thank you. So I have about 25 years experience in the IT space. Started my career as a software engineer. Quickly realized that I enjoyed getting to the why of why we were doing things from a coding perspective, from a technology perspective, and slowly shifted towards the business side of things. Spent most of my career kind of at that intersection of business and technology. I recently concluded 10.5 years in the management consulting space, where I wore a variety of hats as a leader, from people leadership to client leadership to practice leadership to operational leadership. And currently, I'm in the process of a job search and looking forward to landing my next role soon, and excited to share my experience here on the panel.
Awesome. Looking forward to that too. Travis?
Thank you, Jessica. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Travis Hines, and my background is in human resources. have over 25 years of HR leadership, primarily in the supply chain distribution space. Currently, I am a director for an office products company called WB Mason. Um, Part of my subject matter expertise is really developing capital in the intellectual capital space, in addition to mergers and acquisitions. I deal primarily with both associate level personnel and executive personnel, and that balance of the two. So I'm hoping to share some experiences with everyone today.
Great. Elise?
Hi, first of all, thank you so much. It's really quite exciting to be on this illustrious panel. Thank you, Dean. My name is Felice Katz. I'm CEO and founder of PK Technologies. We are a 29-year young solution provider, very customer-driven, customer first, customer last. We cover all the major brands in the IT space, and plus some very unique boutique type things that are cropping up in this ever-changing industry of ours. And very excited and very thrilled to be here, and hopefully we can add some good content for you.
Customer first, you are speaking my language, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
I will have to have.
All good.
So Andy, a little bit of an intro about yourself.
Yeah, I just want to echo. This is great to be here. My name is Andy Sweet. My background is more entrepreneurial, my entire career. So, in the last 15 years, it's been all around AI and now Gen AI. So I've been thinking about this problem from a technology perspective, and I just look forward to this discussion. I think it's very timely.
And AI is going to be definitely a part of this discussion today. So we will get to you. And Chrissy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. So my name is Chrissy Chanchi. I'm currently a solution architecture lead at Red Hat. So my team covers the Eastern Seaboard at Red Hat, and we're responsible for driving over $100 million in revenue. So very exciting. I've been in the technology industry for almost 25 years now, which is crazy to think about. But I'm a technology leader that's just very passionate about innovation and helping teams just hit their full potential. I started my career right out of grad school, building one of the first online banking platforms, and then went over to leading a team that launched some of the first enterprise iPad applications. It integrated with Salesforce and with some of the first AI technologies, and that was over 10, 15 years ago. So that was super exciting. From there, I had the opportunity to lead one of the largest Pega installations and managing it in the world, and that was amazing too. And now I'm here at Red Hat and just enjoying the experience, doing a lot with AI, which has been amazing, and just having the privilege to work with very talented people every day has been great.
Awesome. Well, we also have Ellen, who is here as, how would you describe it, Ellen? You're here to help us out and hopefully join in on the conversation. But we have a lot to unpack and not all day to do it. So we're going to get into the questions without further ado, and hopefully get you guys, as those of you that are listening, some really good insights. So I am going to come right at you, Kevin. We're going to go with right at the top. I mean, I think pretty much everyone here would attest to the fact that finding a job today feels very different than it did perhaps when all of us sort of joined the workforce. And we don't have to talk about how long ago that was, although I think we're pretty seasoned, all of us here. But it's different today. What is happening, and what's changed to make it such a different experience?
Yeah, if you held me to a one-word answer, I would say it's automation, right? Digital automation. And I think I go back to when I started in the staffing industry, and I bought that newspaper and I opened it up and I responded to a want ad, and the latest greatest technology at the time was sending a facsimile to a prospective employer, and I got a call a couple days. And I was in there and I interviewed with the entire C-suite, and it happened all in about a 48-hour period. doesn't quite work that way anymore, right? So you look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and what you see is this automation of a process. And it was for all the right purposes that you bring structure to the job search, right? It was beneficial initially for a candidate, it's beneficial for a company, right, to bring everybody together to provide some sort of structure associated. So come the advent of job boards, right, which helped everybody out, provided some structure. Then you get into applicant tracking systems, which again, it provides purpose, it provides structure. And now what you have is AI, excuse me, taking a big bite out of all those applicant tracking systems and all these things on LinkedIn that have jobs posted, and Career Builder and Dice and Monster, and these endless, right, portals that everybody ends up shooting their resumes to, and everything else. And really what it comes down to is multiple levels of more data points than at any other time in history. That's really what it is, right? And now it's filtering all the data. It's providing accuracy to the data, cleansing the data. And in my humble opinion, I think what we found is with that automation and seeking out a better way for, you know, prospective employees and employers, you have the dehumanization of what is innately a human process, which is everybody seeking their next job, everybody searching for purpose. And I think, you know, from that prospective employer side and that prospective employee side, everything in the middle now has been completely transformed, right? To where there's just too much volume of data everywhere. And it provides minimal interaction now, right? Everybody here, I'm sure, if you're seeking a job, you realize you can apply to LinkedIn, you can apply to all these other job boards. And what is it that you're going to get in return? Sometimes you get a response, but a lot of times a bot response, right? My daughter went on an intern interview months ago, and her first interview was with a bot. Like, think long and hard about that, right? And all it was recording. And I just think with all the AI-driven optimization and its purpose and everything else, we have automated responses that have very little meaning. And, you know, the only way to really address this is to be very specific in your job search, to be very tailored to every particular opportunity. And of course, the panel is going to get to that down the line, but there's also, you know, the workforce has changed. We are now global. You're not competing with people just locally, right here in your backyard. You're competing with people all over the country nationally and in other countries, because now all these job search agents can reach everybody. And I think that's a big thing too. So, I mean, in and of itself, between that and demographics and so on, and the fake jobs that are out there, there's just purely a too large of a volume number of jobs for people to get appropriate responses. And I think we've automated ourselves to oblivion, to be perfectly honest with you. That's my.
So I'm going to thank you very much for that. That's a great intro. Travis, I'm going to actually jump right to you on this. Let's do a follow-up on this one. So especially from your perspective as an HR director, you know, you're seeing it from the other side, which is really important to those of us that want to understand how to do the job search better. So we know that things have changed. I think Kevin nailed it with the automation, and I love how he laid all of that out for us with the kind of how it all unfolded. But how, from your perspective, Travis, how do professionals then adapt to this and approach the job search, knowing that automation has such a big factor, plays such a big factor in the job search?
I do think it's a factor of blending two thought processes, which is technology and relationships, right? So the technology aspect is really, as Kevin spoke to, is the ability to be comfortable with a lot of different mediums. But also when you're job searching as well, people always think about you know, going to specific job boards and going to places where you can formally apply for jobs. But you know, we're in a world now because of the internet, the ability to be able to follow a lot of your favorite companies whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, all of these platforms, and to really understand the companies that you're seeking or the industry that you're seeking and curate and understand what those communities are like. And you marry that with existing relationships. If you don't have a job now, think about the individuals who you worked really well with the job that you just left, and 2 or 3 jobs ago, and 10 jobs ago. Personally speaking, I am working with a person that I worked with 20 years ago. 20 years ago, and it's because of the fact that we have relationships. So, what I would say is, when you're looking, if you're on LinkedIn and you see an individual that you worked with in the past, especially if you had a really good relationship, especially if that person was senior to you and had a lot of influence or some oversight in some areas, it's really good to be able to connect, because what I can say is that a lot of times, or more often than not, a real actual lead will come from somebody that you know, or somebody that can vouch for you, somebody that can at least point you in the right direction. So it's just really important to leverage all of the relationships that you've had in the past, because that will definitely help you to land your opportunity in the future.
What you're really talking about, and this is so important, so we've got to stop here and talk about this, is networking.
Yes.
Networking is foundational. And I know many, certainly my colleagues, friends, they have some trepidation about it. And, it can be, especially for technical oriented people, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable, but it is probably the most important thing that you can do. Yes, I mean, you've got to be thinking about this before you need the job, in my opinion, right?
Jessica, it's a really important fact, but when you say the word networking,
Yeah.
Sometimes people conjure up like some, hotel lounge, hotel lobby, hors
Okay.
d'oeuvres and, waters and iced teas and stuff. But that's not networking. What networking
No.
is, if you're in, if you're in a community and you volunteer, or if you have a particular skill that you like to donate to, or a particular cause. It's just people that you come across that have shared skills and shared interests that you could potentially just understand better and potentially leverage. And the leverage goes both ways. They can leverage you and you can leverage them. So, when you talk about networking, it's really about, what are the things that I like? What do I like to do? And the things that I like to do, the things that I'm good at, the things that I have in-depth knowledge of, maybe lend myself, even if it's not in an earning capacity, to be able to expand and share those resources, share that experience, because the more people you know, the larger your network can be. So you can have a network that way, but network should be viewed in a larger context as well, in my opinion.
It's a give to get, right? You go into it to give to someone else, and
Yes.
they in return, and there's no expectation. It's just a support system.
Always look at it as being symbiotic, because when it's symbiotic and when you have the ability to share your own knowledge and expertise and thoughts, that will always be able to come back to you in a positive way.
So agree. And before we tap off of this topic, Felice, I just want to pull you in too, especially from your perspective as a CEO. What do you think about an approach for candidates trying to, find their next role? How do you see it from the position you sit in?
Okay, so great question. And a couple of things. So first of all, I find that people hide behind emails. It is very convenient for people to pick up the damn phone and have a conversation with somebody. Like, what are people afraid of? Meet me for a cup of coffee. Passion has to come from within, okay? And if people are passionate about the things that they want to do, especially in the IT industry and any industry, it doesn't come through well in an email. You have to have that meeting. You have to have that face to face. I echo, Travis's comments completely. I mean, it's just like I just find it's horrendous, especially so many people just think they shoot off an email and it could be written by ChatGPT, it could be written by anybody, and it just like covers the bases. No, it does not. It has to be in person. It has to be a phone conversation. We are humans. It has to have that, dialogue that's there. The other thing is that our industry, the IT industry, is rapidly changing, and it's changing at a faster clip than it ever has before. Yeah, it started with cloud, and then it's moved accordingly, and and I think we're all nauseous of the AI. Everybody's talking about AI, but there are so many segments within the industry, okay, that you can be an expert and you can have passion about, whether it's security or it's infrastructure or it's basic compute or it is, analyzing data. There is so much there that people can do. It just has to be expressed properly. So you find that right niche, you find that right place for you, where a person can grow, and where an employer also feels that they're growing, their company is growing at the same time. That's what I love.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Dean R, not Dean H, Dean R. I want to talk to you about something, and I actually I've gone through the transition process, so I understand how that sort of feels and some of the things that happen to you as you kind of wander through that exciting chapter. Let's call it that. In any case, it can be, if you're a tenured employee, you've been there a long time, you're in your job, and all of a sudden you find that you no longer have your role. The impact to you emotionally, psychologically can be hard. I'm just gonna say hard. What do you think about it? And how do you, as you kind of face that scenario, how do you gain confidence in yourself and kind of give yourself that fair balance to come at this in a positive way?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and having recently been through that, right? I think the first thing is just to recognize that you're going to go through a range of emotions, right? You're not going to be able to process the whole thing, right? The first hour after you get that news, it's going to take some time to fully sink in, and I think to some extent that's going to be proportional to how long you've been in the role, right? That came to an end. Um, I think you have to take some time for yourself. Talk about it. Talk to your friends, family, former coworkers. Just talking about it helps, right? And folks may have some initial ideas for you, but you're also going to get some reassurances that, hey, this wasn't about you, right? This is the economy. This is just kind of the situation. I think one of the things that helped me the most was to kind of reframe it as an opportunity, right? So rather than seeing it as an ending, seeing it as an opportunity for something new, change your perspective. It's a chance to kind of reevaluate what do I want to do next. Someone like myself that wore multiple hats in my prior role, do I want to try and find a role where I can kind of have that same mix, or do I want to maybe focus on one of those things? Um, where's the passion, right? What is it that is going to get you motivated every morning to get up and go to work? Where do you want to focus, right? Where do you want to learn? Where do you want to grow? Maybe it's a chance to do something completely new, right? Maybe you were comfortable where you were and you just stay there as long as you could, putting off pursuing something new, maybe that's been in the back of your mind, but maybe this is that opportunity. And then, I think as far as kind of just finding balance and building confidence, right? I think initially you have to set some goals. This week I want to have 3 or 4 good networking conversations. I want to get my resume updated. I want to update my LinkedIn profile. And then, find a way to track those things, whether it's a spreadsheet, a Kanban board, right? Whatever, a notebook, whatever works for you. And then, what I found is that, I had to be very deliberate at first about the actions I was taking. But then as you start building traction, right, as you start getting responses, as you have good conversations, as one networking connection leads to another, your schedule is going to start filling in on its own to some extent. And, I think before you know it, you're going to be well on your way to finding that next opportunity.
I like one of the things you said there in particular, kind of making a list, right? Make yourself some tasks to go out and achieve and put some structure around your day. And I find that helpful too, in the sense that it kind of takes some of the feeling like you're lost away because you have things to do. Looking for a new job becomes a job, and it can be a little bit more manageable when you feel like you've got some tasks to complete. So
Yeah,
I'm
especially
going to
when
shift to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, just because I just building on that, especially when you've had something to do for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and now it's suddenly not there, right? you got to start building those things that are going to fill your schedule and get you set in the right direction.
So I'm going to shift us a little bit, excuse me, to AI. So Andy, I'm coming right at you. And Kevin, excuse me, all. Kevin alluded to this in the beginning, that AI is now a factor in the job search when you're applying for a job, and even to the point of creating and doing, actually conducting the interviews. Tell us what's really going on.
Yeah, so I love the point, and I'm going to maybe try to connect some dots here. I do think COVID kind of played a role as well. People became very comfortable with remote meetings, and the friction to ghosting somebody, and ghosting is a real problem. And the friction for ghosting is almost zero, right? You just don't show up. But if somebody's coming to your lobby and is there for a meeting, it's a little harder to ghost them. So I really love Lisa's kind of point too of being human. Make a call, set something up face to face. And that's how candidates can potentially break through. They're not going to break through. People ask me all the time, how can I use AI to game the AI? And there's some techniques, but that's not really the answer. The answer is going back to human. I'm going to make one more point. When we consult with clients, there are some decisions in a business like pricing that lends itself very much to AI. There's other decisions in the business that humans should absolutely either be driving or completely involved without AI. And I would say hiring is one of those. It's a very, very human to human activity. And when AI goes amok, typically it's when we try to apply it to decisions or processes that humans should really be involved. And that's what's happening. So those are a couple of things that I see happening. The other thing I would say, though, and I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth really quick, is if you're a candidate, really spend time understanding how large language models work, like ChatGPT, understand how you can use them and develop a point of view on them. And develop a point of view with the companies you're talking about. Invest in understanding that company and invest in understanding how AI could potentially help them. Every role is going to be leveraging AI, if not today, very quickly. And so have that point of view that you bring to a human because you made a phone call and you bypass the AI, but you have an AI point of view. So hopefully I summarized that well, but I think it's kind of the dots that have been laid out by the panelists here, which I think are spot on.
So I'm going to take us sort of down a journey. Once you are starting your job search, there's certain, in the beginning, there's some energy around that. And as time goes by, it can get more complicated. But I want to ask you to take us through sort of that ride where you've been out of work for a couple of months, maybe. Right now it's getting 6 months along, and you've been doing all the right things and taking the advice that the panelists here have shared, but you're still looking. How do you recommend you can get yourself reinvigorated in the search and kind of freshen it up a little bit?
I think it's been said that, it is a process. I mean, you can't let it get you down. You look at the numbers that are out there and realize that, there's a lot of good people that are looking. So, the chances are you're going to land something quick are probably not that great. So it's going to take a while. And you just got to be comfortable with that and feel like confident that what you're doing is working. If it's not working, then you need to understand what changes you might need to make. But I'd say like having a job search, they say, finding a job is a full-time job. Well, if you're out of work, then you can make it that, but don't make it more than that. So compartmentalize and say, hey, I want to work on this many hours on this task, and this is what my plan is for the day, and then break away. Do the other stuff in your life that, keeps you whole, interact with family and friends, go out, get some exercise. I know my wife was in a extended job search that lasted up to 6 months. She got involved in yoga. She got involved in pottery. So she was like having like stuff that allowed her to get away from that. But it's also a learning process. So, identify the things that are working and what isn't working, and adjust accordingly, and just stay positive. So
I want to go back to you, Travis, real quick. I just want to do one follow-up to the ghosting element that, Andy brought up. And I think your perspective here is going to be helpful as an HR leader. Why is that happening? And what do we do as candidates to combat that?
The traditional candidate probably won't understand all of the inner workings. All of us on this call understand, but candidates take it personal, and they shouldn't. But I know that it's easier. It's always easier said than done. It's difficult for them to understand the whys. The whys could be very simple. The whys could be, this job was potentially, an internal candidate probably had the inside track all along, and they're going through AAP aspects and just making sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's to make sure that they've allowed other people to actually apply. It could be scenarios where the job is on hold. It could be a scenario where the need for the job actually switched. The failing is really from the employer not having a responsive, giving the applicant responsive feedback to their interview. So, that's the first thing is, they shouldn't take it personal, the fact that, they are being ghosted. But I do think Andy really spoke to something that is really important, which is if you have an opportunity, if you have the choice, always take an in-person meeting, always take the in-person interview. That gives you an additional layer of engagement that you won't get through Zoom or Teams. And just understanding that concept to be able to meet people, shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye, see the layout of potentially where you're going to be working, right? Taking business cards, developing some level of engagement so that you'll be remembered. When you're in the interview process, you're looking for clues. You're looking for clues. You're looking for timelines. You're looking for thoughts in terms of, is this something that's an urgent need? Is this a wish, or is this something that they have to have replaced? How long has the job been open? You're asking very targeted, specific questions. And when that's done, you're also looking for a follow-up. You're also following up yourself, following up, by email. You're following up by potentially connecting with this individual on LinkedIn. When I was a kid, my grandmother, she always had quite the mouth, and she always said, nagging is two things: tone and timing. She was like, that's it. Tone and timing, that's what nagging is. And so that's something as a child, I always remembered. So it's a delicate, it's a delicate balance how to still connect and be engaged, but not do it so much, especially when there isn't really an opportunity. But what that does do is it lets you potentially know at times that you're not the candidate. And that's all we want sometimes. Hey, it wasn't for me, but if they definitively let you know that, you're not moving forward in the process, at least you kind of have the closure that you need. And it circling back is not taking it personal. Just understanding that this is a methodology of an organization, and you put your best foot forward, and you want to have that similar approach with every interview that you go on.
Awesome.
Chrissy, did you
Awesome.
have a
Thank you.
thought?
So one more thing to kind of add to what Travis was saying, and this is just a quick thing. When you get to that, if you get to that interview with the hiring manager, you get kind of past that first HR screening, and you have that interview with the hiring manager. Usually it's that etiquette to write a follow-up email and say thank you for the interview, and that's kind of a standard thing that usually most people do. But it's also okay to follow up a couple of weeks later. I would only do it one time, but to follow up a couple of weeks later and check in, kind of circle back on the conversation that you had with the hiring manager. And then as Travis said, either you find out that maybe you're not the candidate, or they explain to you kind of the background. Maybe maybe the hiring position was put on pause. Maybe some other things came up where it wasn't you, but that's also a really good opportunity to get some answers on that. And you don't always get it. And I highly stress doing it only once. I wouldn't do it multiple times, but doing it that one time a few weeks after the interview, if you don't hear back, I think is usually a good thing.
I
And
also actually, while you're
Jessica, I
on,
just
Chrissy,
wanted to add that that's why, to Chrissy's point, being an in-person interview, where you can potentially get business cards and you can get people who you've interacted with. And that's another thing that you do is when you do have an opportunity, try to use that time to get contact information. So you have a beeline to the potential person that is going to be the decision maker or have influence over the job that you're applying for as well.
that's great advice, Travis. Thank you for adding that in there. Chrissy, I want to come to you again. This could be sort of a delicate subject, but we're going to go there. So, as a hiring manager, those of us that are out looking, especially those of us that are a little more seasoned, so sometimes talk about, age being an effect, or potentially how long we've been in our last role, or perhaps we had a very successful financial situation in our last role and now we're looking. Are those factors, like, how do those factors impact your thought process as a hiring manager? What do you see, not just yourself, but with your colleagues? So age, compensation, and time and role, what does that look like to you on the other end of the desk?
So yeah, so I have to say as a cat, so kind of that direct age discrimination hopefully doesn't happen. I think I came across that once as a candidate where I was literally told that by not a hiring manager, but I think an HR recruiter, which is not good to hear, but at least that that's probably not an organization that you want to be part of that,
Right.
explicitly does something like that. But um, so with age, I think nobody wants to directly discern by that. And ways to, I think maybe sometimes people do that unconsciously where they don't know they're doing that. And some really great ways to combat that are to I think what they're really looking for are things that maybe people associate with older age, but it's not true. I think when people are looking for younger candidates, maybe subconsciously, are they want to see the eagerness, the enthusiasm, the willing to, but maybe the less jadedness. I think maybe they're consciously trying to avoid candidates like that. But the truth of the matter is you can see those things in younger people just as much as you do people who are more seasoned. So a great way to combat that is to bring that liveliness to your interactions with your hiring managers. Bring that enthusiasm, bring what gives you that energy, what gives you that motivation every day to come to work. Bringing that there and showing that I think overcomes any unconscious, and I really do. I think most of the time it's that unconscious bias towards a younger candidate. The other thing too with well seasoned is I would really look at the role. If a role is if the role is explicitly saying senior project manager, senior manager, something senior, there's always a budget tied to every role. So if you are well seasoned and you're looking for a certain level of compensation, I would look more for those senior roles, especially given that you have that experience in that role. So those are kind of things you want to ask yourself. Like if still looking for that, that compensation is important to you, if you're still in that stage of your life, and going for those senior positions that you're qualified for. I would focus my search efforts on that. If you're
Awesome.
wanting to continue to work or maybe pursuing another field, then and consciously accepting that it may not be that level of compensation, then feel free to go for the more mid-level roles. But I would pay attention to what that's listed as when they list the role.
That's
Thank
an
you so much for
important factor, Jessica, because when you're recruiting for a position, you're looking at somebody's employment history to a certain degree, especially depending on what they're applying for. If the comp isn't a match historically, the employer is always concerned that this is going to be a bridge, right? And so they're taking it for now, especially if they're not working. They're taking it for now, and then when they get the job that they want, that they're going to be gone. So, that's something to always make sure that you are applying for jobs that support or just make sense. When you're interviewing, as long as what you're saying makes sense, it's easy. It's always easier to digest. Culture is also another aspect that kind of comes into play. And what I mean by culture is that if you're in the type of job where, for that particular organization, the people that are currently in that role are younger or maybe significantly younger. You have similar experiences and similar backgrounds, but you're, maybe older than those individuals who are already working there. They may look at that as a culture concern. However, because of your experience, you're going to be bringing things to the table, and offering thoughts that, just from a tried and true perspective, that others who may be younger haven't necessarily thought of or been through. So there are things that you can still add value, and age does add value. It just depends on the specific role that you're targeting and how that fits into the scheme. And that's why it's always important to try to do your homework and try to do your research on a particular organization so that when you're in the interview or you're in the pre-screen, you can kind of speak to, those potential concerns and offset those concerns, by, what you bring to the table.
Positioning yourself properly when you're walking into the scenario, going after the right level, right job level that makes sense. And I agree, people will question if you're looking for compensation that's significantly less than what you may have been before. It's a fair question, but I think to your point, you can sort of get yourself with some homework, do it in a way that comes across in a beneficial way for you. I'm gonna we only have a little bit of time left. And in that last little bit, I'm going to talk about sort of the angle of this job search from the perspective of what happens if you're now a year in and time has gone by and you're still searching. And this is much more common today, I think, than it would have been 10, 15 years ago. Dean H., love to hear what you think and how you advise your clients, friends, colleagues, etc. on what do you do at that point? How do you
Sure,
approach it?
very good question and very important question. So thank you for that, Jess. I suggest people don't go it alone, as I say, right? To go it alone, if you've been out of work for 6 months, a year, longer than that, the gremlins can start creeping into your head. It's me. There's a problem with me. I'm doing something wrong. My market isn't there anymore. Couldn't be further from the truth. So if you talk to your friends, your former colleagues, like was brought up earlier, people that know you well, do an mock interview with them. Stay fresh, stay current on what's going on out there in the market. Show your value to the organization. Do your research, do your homework on companies that you're interested in. I know it's happened to everybody, probably, or many people on this panel, myself included, where you've been out of work for a while and you go, what is wrong with me? I usually could pick up a phone and call a couple of people I know that know me, and I'll land surely someplace. And then you go, there's crickets out there. So I know one of the things I did is I researched the market. I read every single thing I could, what's going on out there with the current economy. I looked at certain companies that I was interested in and I researched them. And then I reached out to the most senior people that I could and connected with them on LinkedIn. One of the things that I was able to do was to create 2 positions for myself with 2 companies in my career where I had absolutely no connections there. And how did I do that? I researched companies. I looked for the CEOs of those companies. I connected with them on LinkedIn. They connected with me. Hark, it was simple. Next day, I said, thank you for connecting with me. A couple of days after that, I sent them a note and I said, thank you for connecting with me again. I'm really interested in your organization. I like what I'm reading about. I think I can add value to your company, and here's why. And I would welcome the opportunity to meet with you at your earliest convenience to discuss it. Well, each one of those companies invited me in to meet with them, and they hadn't hired anybody in a couple of years. They created a role for me. So 2 times I placed myself. by creating something from nothing. And it was a little bit out of the box. It was a little uncomfortable to do that, but I did it. And other people could do that too. Don't be afraid if you're out of work for a while to ask people that you know for help. Network, network, network.
You know,
Love that.
be active
Felice,
as
I want
well
to,
is a key. It's just really important just to be active just to do something, right? And I always just refer back to, the things that you're most passionate about. Really take an active level of engagement in that opportunity, because an employer is always going to want to know after 6 months, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And you want to be able to articulate what you've been doing, whether it's taking a course, whether it's volunteering, whether it's something that is personal and you're passionate about. Because again, if you're passionate about it, money is always important. But even when you're in a scenario where you may not be getting any revenue from it, just the level of being engaged and being able to speak to that will tell an employer that you're active. You're active in the marketplace, and you're active doing things, and you're not just kind of just mailing it in.
awesome. Felice, I want to ask you a question sort of related to this, and I think it applies right out of the gate, even when you have a job, in my opinion, but certainly as the search goes on, and that's all around your personal brand. And it goes back to how you're presenting yourself. And I think, Travis had brought that up just a few moments ago, but how would you advise someone to really develop their own personal brand? Because we're selling ourselves, right? So we should have some sort of position that we kind of present as. What do you think?
Oh, it's good. It's good. You know, not to plug Dean, but you need somebody who's going to work with you on your physical appearance, okay, on your resume, to cut out the things that are absolutely irrelevant, to really promote yourself. One of the things that we didn't discuss, for example, that our, I don't want to call it generation, but certainly this group has, we're used to working in offices. This is a very controversial subject for employers right now. Do you return to office? Do you work remote? People who are in their 50s and 60s, they're used to going into an office. They would like to return. Employers want that. These are things that are all marketable activities that we have, that not necessarily people who have different ideas have, just in terms of what what considers work-life balance means. So getting yourself the right coach, getting yourself the right person to enable you to present yourself at your very best. The same rules do apply. Dress for success. That hasn't changed. Being personable, making those, just coming off just like really, again, with your passion, with your ability, with your personality, so that when you're there, you're really able to promote yourself. Okay. And it's a lot of practice, a lot of talking into the mirror. That's, at the end of the day, that rear view mirror is very important. So, you just gotta constantly look at that. I think it's, it's all these things are tremendous, tremendous help. I know as an employer, I ask ridiculous questions all the time. Just be prepared for those off things that you're going to get as part of an interview.
So I'm going to take us to our, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, really quick. This
Yeah.
is where I love, personal branding, I think, is fundamentally important, and using somebody like Dean, but there's also an opportunity here to use AI. And it's not to put it out, but it's to interact with and say, here's my resume, here's my LinkedIn profile, here's some stories about me. Tell me who I am. And you don't take it word for word, but it was interesting. It totally repositioned how I present myself. I had talked about myself in the context of technology forever. And I think it was Claude 4.0. I'm not plugging any particular LLM, but Claude said, you're really an entrepreneur. You've had these 3 acquisitions, these 3 exits. You've created, these companies and then sold them. That's who you are. And so I totally changed how I talk to the market. And that's a way to use AI. Again, not having it write emails for me, but interacting with it and trying to understand, why, what things resonate, what things don't. So just quick recommendation for those out there.
Thank you so much for that. What I want to do right now is one of my favorite things to do on a panel, which I call the speed round. And we have such great voices in this group. And I feel that you each have more to say, and I want to make sure that everybody gets their great advice across. So we're going to do that in the speed round. The thing about the speed round is I'm asking you to give me your number one best piece of advice to someone who is in the job search right now, and do that in 60 seconds or less. Can we do this? We got a lot of you on this panel. I want to hear from everybody. So 60 seconds, best piece of advice for those watching our show. And I am going to start with Bill. You've got yourself on mute, though.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
That always happens.
Yeah. So I would say make sure you're learning through the process and identifying what's working and what's not working for you, assuming that you have stuff that is working. So I know like a lot of people, like they're out there, they're applying to job. They're hitting easy apply on the LinkedIn. And I've heard people like say, you're just wasting your time there. If you've done that 200 times or 300 times and you got no responses, it's probably safe to say that that might not be a good use of your time. So, just learn what is working. I like getting feedback from like the AI approach in LinkedIn that says like how am I a fit for this job, and that'll give you some stuff there where you'll kind of like highlight things that you could focus on more to present yourself better. So I've made use of that in my process. So yep.
Awesome. Dinar?
Sure. So I think my biggest piece of advice would be to leverage relationships, right? I think everything in business comes down to relationships. Networking is just so important. You never know who someone you're talking to might know, but be targeted about it as well, right? So there's folks in your past that you've worked with that you've gotten great advice from, just connect with them, right? Maybe you have something to offer them at the same time, and just talk about how things are going. You never know, again, who they might know, but also be proactive. Identify some companies that you'd be interested in working for, right? Rather than just chasing roles, right? Say, hey, I want to work at company XYZ. Who do I know that works there, or who am I connected to that has a connection there, and start building relationships so that maybe when they have a role open up, you already have the relationship, right? And you're going to be ahead of the curve, getting consideration for that role. So at the end of the day, I think it's
Awesome.
just that's my
That's
number one.
That's a good one. I love it. I love it. Chrissy, what you got?
Yes. So a lot of what we heard a lot of today was networking, and we also heard that maybe not everybody's comfortable with networking. One of the things that helped me a lot and helped me overcome it, and it works like such a charm and in ways that you don't expect, is to go to conferences, and you get to pick which conferences you go to. So pick the conferences that touch upon the things that you loved about your job, and go to those. And you're not it's so you may not like you might find a job prospect there, you might meet somebody that might help you find an opportunity. Those things might happen, but you're also going to be learning the most recent things about that industry. You're going to be, as Dean said, you're going to be finding maybe some other companies that you might want to work for, or what's happening, so that when you do go on that next interview, you're going to have the most recent things to talk about, and more kind of more relevant things to just discuss in your interview. So those are great ways to network, especially when you're not as comfortable with it. Talking about things that you like and things that you have experience in are a lot easier than just kind of cold going up to a table of people you don't know at a hotel lobby with your iced tea in hand. So those are great things to do. And I wouldn't eat at those hotel lobbies. I would, maybe carry a bottle of water or something, but treat yourself after the networking event. Give yourself some positive reinforcement. Go out to eat afterwards, and after you're done with the event, and do something that just makes you feel good about it. And because that people pick up on that. People, will, as you go to those events, they'll pick up on your enthusiasm, and you'll get to meet more people. So that's my advice.
Love that. Love that. Andy, what you got?
I'll be quick. So I have some advice for the hiring manager side, and that is, remember, you're not just talking to a candidate, you're talking to a potential future customer, a potential future CEO that will want to buy your product, and your brand is tied up in how you treat that candidate. So I would just kind of leave that there. That's one. Two, for the candidate side, just really building on what everybody was talking about here. I do think putting together a point of view as well on the company you're talking to, on where AI could potentially fit into the role, whatever that is, having a point of view. So you're not being passive in that interview, in that conversation. You're actually bringing to the table original thinking. I think that I had a mentor at IBM tell me it makes you look 20 IQ points smarter, and I could use every IQ point I can get. So I always followed it.
Great. Felice?
Two very quick thoughts. One of them is come prepared. Okay. Do your homework. You've heard this a couple of times, but it's more than that. It's not only doing your research, it's staying on top of the news, looking what's going on in the industry, understanding really what is happening. You know, AI, great buzzword, but what does it really mean? What does security really mean? What do those things mean? What is a company getting acquired? Are they being acquired? Are they what is going on in their ecosystem? These are important things that are part of the conversation. And just be humble, okay? Just, when you come, there should be no sense of arrogance. There should just be that, you have to come as yourself. You have to show you love what you do, and you're gonna, show that love to a potential employer, but be humble. People look for that. If there's a sense of arrogance, it comes across, and the interview doesn't last very long.
Thank you for that, Travis.
Two things really quickly. First is leverage to Dean's point and reconnect with some of your old colleagues, some of your old managers that you've worked for and worked with in the past. They may not get you the job, but they will have a particular impact, and whether it's through direction or guidance or feedback in terms of you leveraging your next opportunity and getting your next opportunity, and even potentially being, a potential reference for you. So just reach back and connect back with, not your last job, but 2, 3, 4 jobs ago, especially if you had a really good relationship, and start with that on LinkedIn. The second is the thing that you're really passionate about, the causes that you're really passionate about. Have a connectivity of what you do really well, what you want to do in your next career path. If there's a way to marry that with your cause and the thing that you do well, if you're IT, figure out how to leverage your IT background. If you're marketing background, try to figure out how to leverage and volunteer that marketing background to your cause, because that is another way where you can expand your networking ability, but also demonstrate your value for a future employer.
Great. Thank you. And Kevin?
I'm sitting here and I'm listening, and we're all talking, and every distinguished panelist has a common thread. And Dean kind of said it best: networking, and more networking, right? And that is so critical, and we're all talking about it, and we're talking about other approaches as well, but you have to network all the time. You can't just network when you're looking for a job. You have to think about networking as part of your job when you're gainfully employed, right? It's when you make those priceless relationships that will help you when you find yourself potentially in transition. It makes all the difference in the world. Have specific goals every single day. You could network in person, you could network virtually, but commit to finding 2, 3 new contacts per day. Ask them for other meetings, right? And then I think Andy might have touched upon this too. Micro target where you want to work, right? You can apply to 80 million jobs, but the truth is you need to identify a company that you're interested in, a company that may have some jobs that actually align with your background, and then you attack it by not just responding to the job, but getting to know people that may be in there through other contacts you don't even know you have yet. Be fearless. It's okay to reach out to the head of an organization. It's okay to email. It's okay to pick up the phone and call. It doesn't mean you're an aggravator. It means you're being persistent, and it means you're being smart and approaching it. And the last thing is just bring some organization to the job search. I'm a big believer in having a spreadsheet in front of you. What's the name of the company, the names of the titles of the jobs, when did you apply? Who do I know in that organization? Who did I get introduced to in that organization? What was the result, right? And how do I further penetrate that organization? That's what a simple spreadsheet can bring, is some purpose and structure to your search.
So well said. Thank you, Kevin. And Dean, can you kind of round us out? You get the final say here.
Well, thank you. Real quick, connect with more people on LinkedIn. Don't be afraid, like Kevin was saying, don't be afraid to connect with the most senior people in the organization that you're targeting. They don't bite. They're going to connect with you. If you invite Felice Katz to connect with you, she's going to connect with you, right? So just don't be afraid to do that. Also, when you are going on an interview, why should I work for you? Why should I work for you? What can you sell me about working for your company? That's not the approach. What value can you bring to that organization and stand behind that and prove the value that you could bring and your interest there? And the other thing I wrote down real quick, a friend of mine was a senior project manager who was on a 6-month project for 10 years down at JP Morgan Chase, and he was a consultant and they cut him out. So he kept emailing me this information that he wanted to send to my connections. So I kept doing it. But after the 5th and 6th time, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said he's looking to put this podcast together. And he was looking for the opinions of these senior level people that, would this be of interest to you? I said, and the back end of that is, you're looking for a position, so you can bring that into the equation, but not leading with that. Brilliant approach. Put a video together, put a podcast together, do something different, do something out of the box that's going to get you seen. I'm done.
Wow, that's great. Well, I have to say, this was a lot of great information, jam-packed with good advice. I know that this is going to be helpful to those that listen. I must say thank you to the panelists. You've all been awesome, and most especially to Dean for putting this all together. So thank you all, and have a lovely day.
Thank you.